But with that being said, I'm going to move on and talk about my next thing. Sort of getting into my documentary bag. I watched the Freaknik documentary on Hulu that premiered a couple weeks ago. I don't have a ton to say about it. I mean, I think a lot of black people have heard about Freaknik, the Legends of Freaknik. That was a big 90s party, or at least their heyday was in the 90s. What this documentary does is really unpack the history of it, how it came to be, how it grew to be what it was in the 90s, and ultimately what led to its demise. And overall, the documentary was fine. It was okay. I think what I enjoyed the most is anytime that they tied in the legacy and the history of Freaknik to other cultural events, how it impacted the Atlanta hip hop scene and really sort of kickstarted Atlanta's domination of hip hop, and how Outkast were very integral to that, how Jermaine Dupri was very integral to that, how A Different World, when it was on the air, helped expand Freaknik and become a national thing because they mentioned it on one of their episodes, and all of a sudden the whole country knows about Freaknik now. And then, of course, just like what led to the demise and sort of the arrival of the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta was really the beginning of the end for Freaknik, because it just changed up the focus and the efforts of the city in terms of what they wanted to portray Atlanta as, and Freaknik just didn't fit that mold. On top of the fact, a lot of heinous shit happened. People were getting raped and assaulted and all sorts of shit that they touch on, but they don't touch on it enough. They celebrate it a lot, which is good. You should celebrate it because it did start from a pure place. But by the time we get to the accounts of like what was happening to people, I don't know if it was just a lack of interviewers available, a lack of subjects that they could talk to, but there was really only a couple of accounts that we kind of dive into. Otherwise, you kind of get people vaguely speaking about it, like, oh, I wasn't even going to Freaknik anymore, but I know that it turned into this, or that was when I was done with Freaknik. It wasn't so specific as I think it needed it to be, and I think that it could have used just a lot more insight from that perspective, just to transition on what it became by those final few years. And one interesting thing they did talk about at the end of it was just like the multiple efforts that have been made to bring Freaknik back and how it's been reinvented and turned into all sorts of stuff. It's weird to see. I don't really get why people are trying to make that a thing in today's age. Like it just won't work. Like nobody can pull that off in today's age. Nobody's doing what they were doing in the 90s or the 80s. Like that shit is just it's just not valid anymore. So it was fine. It was okay, but it just felt a little bit surface level, and so I wanted a little bit more out of it.
Yeah, it was funny you say that, because I heard, I haven't watched it yet, but I heard like some of the people they interview or they're talking on the documentary. It was like, wait, why is that person here? is that person really important to the story of Freaknik? Like, why are we interviewing them?
Like 21 Savage, like why is he in
21
here?
Savage. I heard like Mark Lamont Hill. He would have been like, not even around. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's just interesting. Some of the people they chose.
Sometimes I think these documentaries and these production teams, they just identify people who were good storytellers, even if they weren't directly involved. And Mark Lamont Hill, good storyteller.
Great storyteller.
He knows how to talk about things and provide context and background info because he knows his shit. And I think that that's just the purpose that he served. And that's okay. Sometimes those people won't be directly involved. You can't always expect that. I see a lot of documentaries where this person is just here to provide color. They're not directly involved in those things. And so I think that was his purpose. But I did look at like 21 Savage, who like every 7 scenes he would come in like, yeah, Atlanta was just different at that time, man. And it's like, yeah, I get it, bro.
UK.
Like I get.
Were you even here?
Like, really? Were you even here? You were pretty young, my guy. We're around the same age, and so there was some questionable people for sure that was involved that probably didn't need to take up an extra space. If we're being honest about it, so it was fine.